Hey everyone, my name is Pat Garofalo and I'm the Director of State and Local Policy at the American Economic Liberties Project, an anti-monopoly think tank and advocacy group here in Washington, D.C. If you're watching something like this from an organization like ours, you may have heard that antitrust law is officially back here in the United States. After decades of rampant corporate consolidation, the Biden-Harris administration has taken action to challenge the most notorious monopolists of our time. They've sued Ticketmaster, Amazon, Google, and more, and are working to prevent new monopolies from forming in healthcare, the food industry, and beyond. But something you might not know is the crucial role state attorneys general play in this movement. In many cases, state AGs are the first to bring charges against proposed mergers, anti-worker tactics, price-fixing schemes that are later followed by federal cases. In other instances, state AGs and federal enforcers have joined together, combining forces and resources to protect consumers and workers. Without these contributions, the anti-monopoly movement would not be where it is today. That's why I'm so excited to be sitting down with Arizona Attorney General Kris Mayes. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Pat. Thanks for having me. Appreciate
AG
it.
Mayes has been at the forefront of the movement to revitalize antitrust for the modern economy. For example, her office filed a vital lawsuit alleging a destructive price-fixing scheme among landlords facilitated by a software algorithm, a scheme that has since made national news and drawn a DOJ lawsuit. Alongside the Federal Trade Commission, AG Mayes also challenged the Kroger-Albertsons grocery mega merger, which would be the largest grocery merger in American history if we're allowed to go through. She sued Amazon for using anti-competitive tactics to raise prices and has pushed for more disclosure of private equity investments in nursing homes. And there's so much more that didn't make the list. I could be here all day talking about this, but you don't really want to hear from me. You want to hear from AG Mayes. So first off, I would love for us to start with the big picture. From the outside, from here in the cheap seats, it looks like your office has completely revitalized antitrust enforcement in Arizona. What drove you to make this a focus of the work?
Yeah, I think that's true. You know, coming into this job as Attorney General of Arizona, you know, I had a sense that this was an area I wanted to focus on. Had a sense that, as you just said, in a lot of states, antitrust has fallen by the wayside, especially in states where we had Republican AGs that weren't terribly interested in it. And I came into the job having served 2 terms in Arizona as a utility regulator. So I'm a former, what they called Arizona Corporation Commissioner, which is Arizona's statewide elected public utility commission. So I know a little bit about monopolies, and I know a little bit about the necessity of regulating monopolies and about what can happen when monopolies are allowed to run amok and how that can harm consumers. The whole idea behind regulating monopoly utilities is the regulatory compact, which says that, you know, if you're going to allow a company to be so big and to essentially have a captive customer base, then that company should also submit to regulation, both quality of service regulation and price regulation. That's the regulatory compact. And what I think has happened in the United States is that we have allowed a whole bunch of other kinds of companies to get so big and to consolidate so much that they have so much power, they can hurt consumers, but we haven't added the regulatory part of it, right? You know, they can charge whatever prices they want when they get that big. They can provide whatever level of service they want when they get that big. And the whole idea behind antitrust laws, both at the state and the federal level, is that we don't want that kind of consolidation, that competition is good. And competition is a necessity in order to protect consumers. So I knew it was going to be an area that I wanted to focus on as AG. What I didn't, I think, realize when I came into office is how kind of defunct it had actually become. And so it's been super exciting to rev it back up, to revivify it in Arizona, but also to watch people like Lena Khan and the FTC and the Biden and Harris administration revive it nationally, and to be in partnership with them on cases as well.
So one of your most significant actions has been suing RealPage, a software corporation that allegedly helped coordinate a price-fixing conspiracy for rental housing across Arizona and, in fact, the country. You filed this lawsuit in February. DOJ has filed a similar suit. Can you tell us a bit about what you discovered there and what this case says about where modern antitrust law needs to look?
Yeah, so we consider the RealPage case one of the most important cases that my office has brought in my 2 years in office now, and I think it has really struck a chord with Arizonans who have been feeling the extremely negative effects of what I call old-fashioned price fixing using new technology. That's what's going on in the RealPage case, which has led to increased rents in Arizona and a decrease in affordability in housing. And what we found was that this company called RealPage, which is a software company, was colluding with 9 major landlords in Arizona to set prices, fixed prices at an artificially high level. And what RealPage said to those landlords was, hey, send us all of the data you have about your apartment units, location, what the price was before, details about the neighborhood, and square footage, stuff like that. And we will set the rent for you and for everybody else. And oh, by the way, while you're at it, nobody deviate from that. And that's just price fixing, and that I believe that is how rents have risen in Arizona. And they have risen. I mean, we're looking at a situation in Arizona in which prices have gone up in Phoenix since 2016, 75%, roughly 75% rent increases since 2016. In Tucson, 30% rent increases. And, in Phoenix, 70% of all of the apartment units are controlled by these landlords and by RealPage. And more than 50% of the apartment units in Tucson are controlled by this RealPage software and these landlords that were colluding with each other, meaning essentially that the majority of apartment dwellers, people who pay rent, were subjected to or are being subjected to price fixing. And it's terrible. And so I think that's why people have reacted so positively to that lawsuit that we filed against them.
I've definitely seen, even in non-political, non-policy, non-economic circles, folks in Arizona are talking about that case.
Yes.
It hits something that people are feeling.
Absolutely hits something. And everywhere that I go, Pat, everywhere I go, people want to talk about that case. And I think it's because, number one, they're impacted by it. And number two, people see the unfairness of allowing these very large corporate entities, many of which are out of state, many of which are national. These landlords have apartment buildings all across this country. As you know, my colleague Brian Schwalb here in Washington, D.C. also brought this lawsuit.
And a bunch of the same players are here.
Same players here, and then of course you mentioned the Department of Justice lawsuit as well. So I just think that is a really important case, and unfortunately it's not, I think, a unique situation. I'm very worried, and I know that the Chairwoman Khan is also very worried at the FTC about this kind of consolidation in the housing industry, but also the use of algorithms across a whole bunch of different industries in a way that is unfair to consumers.
So moving from something that sounds a little newfangled, even if it is classic violations of the law, to something everyone's familiar with, groceries.
Yes.
You've also sued to block the big Kroger-Albertsons grocery merger alongside the FTC and a bunch of other states. Can you tell us about that suit and why it was important for Arizonans to get involved?
Yeah, so this is another one that I think really is important to Arizonans. We decided to formally oppose. I decided to formally oppose the proposed merger between Kroger and Albertsons. These two companies own Safeways and Fry's and some of the most iconic grocery stores in Arizona. They employ, I think, 35,000 people between them, 250 stores, I believe, in the state of Arizona. And our concern is, and I think this concern is shared by a majority of Arizonans, is that this will raise prices on consumers. Again, just too much consolidation in an industry that Arizonans and Americans must have. I mean, we all buy groceries, and we already have enormous consolidation in the grocery industry. So we just thought it was too much. We thought, I did town halls all throughout Arizona on this subject, got out there talking to people about it. And people are concerned about not just the price increases associated with it, but the creation of pharmacy deserts throughout Arizona. Because as you know, increasingly people get their pharmaceuticals in grocery stores. And also, the loss of union jobs, the loss of economic engines. Oftentimes grocery stores are the economic engine for small towns. And much of Arizona is rural. It's a huge state geographically. So we decided to, again, partner up with the FTC on that one, and joined with the FTC. And we just, I think, finished recently the trial portion of that case. So we'll see where that goes. But I think I'm super proud of the work. I'm super proud of the FTC. And we've got two other states, Washington and Colorado, that have brought their own state lawsuits as well against that proposed merger.
That's actually a perfect segue into the next question,
Okay.
Which is, in some cases, state AGs bring antitrust actions on their own, but often they do it in conjunction with federal enforcers and with other states. You see these multi-state alongside the federal government cases. Can you tell us a bit about how state and federal enforcers work together and why it's important to have that cooperation?
Yeah, it really is important to have that cooperation, and we sort of make those decisions about when to go it alone or not go it alone based on the circumstances, based on the case, based on whether there is a nationwide impact or not. If there's a very specific Arizona impact, or we just feel like we need to move quickly, then we might bring that case by ourselves. But it's really nice to have the help of the FTC. It's nice to be able to combine your resources. It's also nice to have different eyes on the same issue. I think my philosophy and Chairwoman Khan's philosophy are very similar. In fact, she was in my office a few days ago, visiting Phoenix and Arizona. She shares, I share her concern. She shares my concern about extreme consolidation and the need to bring antitrust back. So, it just sort of depends on the situation, the facts, and the case. But oftentimes, if the FTC is interested in something, we will work with them, to ensure that the people of Arizona are protected. We even worked with the FTC recently on a case involving what we alleged was discrimination by a local car auto entity, sales entity, and the allegation was that they were discriminating against Latinos in their pricing and in their practices. So it all sort of depends on the case.
Cool. So I think we have time for one more. So
Okay.
I want to talk for a moment about private equity in healthcare. You joined other state AGs in supporting more disclosure and transparency requirements where PE firms and other corporate owners buy nursing homes. You also made news when you warned private equity owners that they would face criminal prosecution for abuse, neglect, and substandard care in those nursing homes that they have bought up. Can you talk about why paying attention to not just PE roll-ups in nursing homes, but across the healthcare and care industries is so important?
Yeah, I am really concerned about private equity ownership in the healthcare space, and we're seeing it across the board, whether it's physician practices, radiology practices, hospitals, and certainly nursing homes. And the problem here is that what private equity wants to do, and we all know this is no secret, right, is they come in, they buy up a bunch of practices, or they buy up a bunch of businesses within an industry, and then they squeeze the profits, as much profit out of it as they can. How do they do that? They lower service quality oftentimes. They lower, in the case of healthcare or nursing homes, they increase patient to doctor and nurse ratios, which hurts patients. And you didn't used to see that when nursing homes were owned by 501c3s or just an individual private actor. So it's extremely concerning. I have made prosecuting elder abuse a top priority of my administration, and I am not going to tolerate elder abuse, mistreatment of our elderly in Arizona, period, but especially if it's happening by private equity firms that have the resources to put into these facilities. And so we recently went so far as to take, in one case, a facility out of the hands of an owner. It wasn't a private equity owner, but we put it into receivership because the treatment of the patients there was so bad. And I'm very willing to go after multi-million-dollar fines against private equity firms or anybody else who engages in elder abuse.
Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.